Well, President Trump shares his hopes and wishes on a beautiful Easter timeline. Governor Cuomo laughs at the task force's recommendations for a 14-day quarantine, and Mayor Van Johnson signs a stay-at-home declaration for the city of Savannah, Georgia. These things and more, this is Inspiring Inquiry.
As we near the end of our historic battle with the invisible enemy, we're going for a while, but we win. We win. I said earlier today that I hope we can do this by Easter. I think that would be a great thing for our country, and we're all working very hard to make that a reality. We'll be meeting with a lot of people to see if it can be done.
Well, very worrying times, folks, and let me tell you exactly why I'm so worried. It's the continued downplaying of this incident by our president. If you guys have been following this like I have, you can remember a few weeks ago when he was saying things like this is a Democratic hoax against his presidency, and then he said that, oh, it's just like the flu, and it from what he heard, it was going to dry up in April and things like that. Now we've moved to more recent events where he's saying things like tremendous hope as we begin to see a light at the end of the tunnel, a beautiful Easter timeline, and as we near the end of our historic battle. He's using terms like these. That is worrying because then we hear things from his experts, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, who say things like this.
New cases will continue to surge because we're still working on our backlog, although we will be in touch with the laboratories after this press conference to really find out how many are still in backlog and how many were run in the last 24 hours. Until we can get into a 24-hour cycle, we're going to have disproportional number of new cases compared to the actual new cases, and we will let you know when we've reached that equilibrium.
So, we don't have regular testing processes. We have tests that have been taken but are in backlog, and we don't know how many have been performed in the last 24 hours. All of these things that we don't know, and yet we still have some sort of an Easter timeline. Let's see what else she has to say on this subject.
We now have 370,000 tests that have been done. The majority of those, over 220,000 in the last 8 days. We're very proud of those numbers, but we know that we have to do more, and we continue to accelerate in testing to ensure that those who need the test are tested first and have access.
So, looking pretty good, sounding pretty good, ramping up our testing. But let's see what Dr. Fauci has to say about the testing so far and what he sees for it in the future.
We need to know what the penetrance of infection is there. So we need to put a light on those dark spots that we don't know. We have to act policy-wise on data. And we're going to be getting more data, a lot more data. When you test, you find somebody, you isolate them, you get them out of circulation, and you do the contact tracing. When you have a big outbreak, it's tough to do anything but mitigation. We have an opportunity now that we have the availability of testing to do that. So you're going to be hearing more about how we can inform where we're going, particularly because we have the ability to test.
Okay, good. Making policies based on data. I'm with you there. But he also said that we need to get in front of the outbreaks and not just mitigate, but prevent it. We need to shine a light on those dark spots. Let's see what else Dr. Birx had to say about that.
But to everyone who has left New York over the last few days, because of the rate of the number of cases, you may have been exposed before you left New York. And I think, like Governor DeSantis has put out today, everybody who was in New York should be self-quarantining for the next 14 days to ensure that the virus doesn't spread to others, no matter where they have gone, whether it's Florida, North Carolina, or out to far reaches of Long Island.
Well, understandably, a lot of people are fleeing New York. It is the hotspot right now for the infections. Largely, I think that it's because of the 370,000 tests that have been performed in the United States. A little over 100,000 of them have been in New York, where they're doing a lot of testing. It's going to make Dr. Fauci's plan to shine a light on those dark areas a little bit harder now that the place where they're doing the most testing is having a lot of people go to a lot of other places in the country. And you heard Dr. Birx say that she recommends that anybody that's been to New York City quarantine for 14 days. Let's see what Governor Cuomo had to say about that.
Self-quarantine in New York State?
The president's team said anyone who traveled to New York City should self-quarantine for 2 weeks
In New York?
in New York City.
No, I don't think, if you were in New York City, you must quarantine in New York State. You don't have to go back to New York City to quarantine. I'm going to quarantine
First
in
of
New
all,
York State.
What do you make of that dictum, and what will you use
That is
self-quarantine?
that is a medical advisory, medicine. I would turn to the doctor.
So I think you need to follow the CDC guidelines, and the CDC guidelines recommend that you stay a distance away, social distancing as well, whether it's in New York or not. And this is beyond New York, as the governor has mentioned. It's not just in New York that these cases.
But the feds are saying that if you've been to New York City, you should quarantine for 2 weeks, right?
I would not follow that. I believe that you should follow the guidelines in general, that you should social distance. And if you were in New York and you go somewhere else, these cases are all over the country. It's not just New York. We are at the forefront, as the governor has said, but it's elsewhere.
Well, you heard it, folks. He's self-quarantining in New York State, yet he's at a press conference. And when he turned to his medical advisor, the medical advisor says that it's pretty much all over the country, so those are guidelines, and that he's not going to follow that guideline. So a lot of mixed messaging coming from our government as to what to do. But let's turn to local Mayor Van Johnson to see what he's doing in Savannah, Georgia.
So in addition to the emergency declaration of March the 21st, 2020, I am hereby announcing additional measures that are needed in our city to protect all of you and to protect all of us. These measures include a shelter-at-home order for all residents with exemption for essential businesses, government functions, and essential activities as defined by my order. In other words, and to put it succinctly and clearly, if you're not working and you're not shopping for groceries, please stay home. Businesses not defined as essential must cease all activities as of the effective date of this order. Public and private gatherings outside of a single household are prohibited except for limited purposes outlined in this order. Travel, except for essential travel and essential activities, is also prohibited. The categories of essential businesses, essential travel, and essential activities are listed in the documents you have been provided. And this is the first amended declaration of the local emergency, which I signed at 9:50 this morning.
Well, as you can see, things are ramping up in Savannah as Mayor Johnson amends his declaration and even adds to it later after state guidance informed him that he should add barbershops, nail salons, and beauty parlors to that list, set to close Friday around 5. You can find all of this information and more on savannahga.gov. Thank you guys for watching. This is Inspiring Inquiry.